Before my brain could even process who he was, my hand moved on its own. Slap. The crisp sound echoed through the tiny, cramped room. I thought he was some kind of creep trying to take advantage of me. But as soon as the blow landed, I realized something was wrong. A sliver of light peeked through the curtains, falling directly across the man's face. He paused, using his tongue to poke the inside of his cheek where I'd hit him. I stared, my eyes widening. His features were deep and well-defined, with a high bridge to his nose and a sharp, masculine jawline. His thin lips were pressed into a hard, straight line. My brain felt like it was exploding. Duan Yin? No, that couldn't be right. I instinctively backed away until my spine hit the wall. Where was I? I was supposed to be dead. This man didn't have the terrifying aura of the capital's most powerful heir, nor did he have the cold, indifferent look he wore after we broke up. Right now, he just looked tired, his brow furrowed as he stared at me with heavy, restrained eyes. Rong Jiqiao, he muttered. My mind went completely blank. I looked up at the yellowing ceiling of the partitioned room. I could hear the muffled sound of a neighbor's TV and the rushing of water through old pipes. Sudden, painful memories rushed back like a physical attack. I had traveled back in time. I was back at the point before we broke up. In my past life, I was a nursing graduate from a vocational school working in a small county hospital. Duan Yin was just a laborer moving bricks at a construction site. He had been injured in an accident and brought to my hospital while I was on shift. I saw the person who dropped him off, someone dressed in expensive clothes, and I assumed Duan Yin was some secret rich kid. I took care of him obsessively while he was unconscious and even paid his medical bills. But when he woke up, he shattered my fantasy. He told me he was just a nobody working construction. I was stunned, but since I'd already spent the money, I stayed close so he could pay me back. Duan Yin was grateful. He ran my errands and picked me up from work every day. I enjoyed it. I loved how handsome he was and how he acted like a loyal dog. Eventually, we started dating. I quit my job and let him support me. When I got bored of our small town, I demanded we move to the capital to find success. He didn't hesitate. He followed me. I thought I was too beautiful for a poor boy like him, and I refused to live in the slums. To satisfy me, Duan Yin worked as a security guard by day, moved bricks in the evening, and sorted packages at a warehouse by night. He did all that just to afford this tiny partitioned room in a decent neighborhood that cost $8,000 a month. There were 7 or 8 people sharing this apartment. The walls were just plasterboard. You could hear the person next door sneeze. The rent alone was enough to crush him, but I was never satisfied. Then, the truth came out. The person who had actually saved him back then wasn't me. My medical bills weren't hundreds of thousands. They were only 5,000. His real savior was a kind, wealthy socialite. Duan Yan's true identity was revealed. He was the heir to a massive fortune. He returned to his family, married the socialite, and I was tossed back to my small town to rot. But he had already ruined me by spoiling me. I didn't know how to work, and I refused to start from the bottom. I kept causing trouble, stalking him in the capital, until finally, the socialite's obsessed admirer had me killed to prove his loyalty to her. I had just been drowned in the ocean. How was I suddenly back here? The fear that I might be killed all over again hit me, so hard my legs gave out. I dropped to my knees right in front of him. Duan Yin, who probably thought I was about to start another fight, looked confused. He blinked, his mouth hanging open slightly. Then, as if realizing something, he slowly knelt down too, facing me. "Can we not play these games?" he whispered, his voice thick with exhaustion and a hint of a plea. "I'm really too tired for this, Rong Jiqiao." We were kneeling face to face, our knees almost touching. I felt a wave of intense embarrassment. I wanted to crawl into a hole and disappear. My survival instincts kicked in. I scrambled to my feet immediately. "What games? I'm not playing anything," I snapped. "The light was off. You scared me, that's all." Duan Yin pushed himself up, sighed, and grabbed his change of clothes. Soon, the sound of splashing water came from behind the thin partition. The feeling of being thrown into the cold sea was still fresh in my mind. I could still hear the voices of the people who killed me. "Just throw him in. Who cares? He's just a pest who won't leave Master Yin alone. Hurry up, before Yin Yin and Master Yin get here." Duan Yin finished his shower quickly. He came out wearing a loose tank top and didn't even look at me. He climbed into bed and fell asleep the second his head hit the pillow. He was utterly spent. His handsome face was pale from back-to-back shifts and manual labor. All the money he earned from destroying his body went into the bottomless pit that was me. The room was so small it only fit a bed and a wardrobe. I hesitated, then lay down on the very edge of the mattress, curling myself into a ball. I felt the warmth radiating from him. It had been so long since we shared a bed. In my memories, he was always cold and disgusted by me. Suddenly, I felt the sheets rustle. Duan Yin pulled me into his arms. He tucked my cold hands against his chest and hooked his legs over mine to warm my feet. It was a practiced, instinctive movement. "Go to sleep," he murmured, his voice heavy with sleep. I froze. For the first time, the reality of being reborn sank in. I knew I was vain. I knew I had lied to him and clung to him out of desperation. But did I really deserve to die? Were there not worse people in the world? I just wanted money. The walls were so thin I could hear the neighbors scrolling through short videos on their phone. I stared at the dark until a sliver of gray morning light touched the window, and finally, I drifted off. When I woke up, the sun was high. Duan Yan's side of the bed was empty and perfectly made. On the nightstand, there was a crumpled note in his sharp, powerful handwriting. "There's food in the fridge. Remember to eat. I have a night shift, don't wait up for me." I didn't have the heart to eat. My mind was racing. I was really reborn. This was my chance to change my fate. Even if I couldn't keep Duan Yin in the long run, I knew I couldn't afford to offend him ever again. In my past life, after Duan Yin returned to the wealthy Duan family, even the random construction workers who had shared a few meals with him rose to power along with him. But I knew the truth about myself. I wasn't smart, and I was incredibly greedy. I came from nothing, so once I got a taste of the high life, I never wanted to be an ordinary person again. Rebirth didn't give me a new brain. I wasn't suddenly going to become a genius. In my previous life, when Duan Yin found out everything I told him was a lie, he still gave me 3 million yuan to leave. I squandered every cent and then went back to harass him like a parasite. This time, if I treated him well from the start, maybe I could get even more money. I'd take the cash and run. No lingering, no stalking. That had to be the key to staying alive. By my count, there were still 6 months before the Duan family would find him. I was lost in thought when a sudden, heavy pounding shook the door. "Open up. I know you're in there." It was the landlady. I took a deep breath and forced myself to open the door. She was leaning against the frame, a massive ring of keys jingling in her hand. "Rent. You're 2 months behind," she barked. I forced a smile. "Sister, look, could you maybe—" "Don't sister me," she snapped, her voice rising. "This place is 8,000 a month. It's not a charity for migrants. You haven't paid in 4 months. If I don't see the money today, pack your bags and get out." 8,000 a month? And I owed 4. My heart nearly stopped. I realized then that all the money Duan Yin earned from breaking his back at the construction site had been spent by me. I'd used it to buy high-end knockoff bags and trashy fake jewelry to look rich while I scouted for wealthy men in upscale bars. "Just give me 1 day, please," I begged, lowering my voice. The landlady practically spat in my face. "Fine. 1 day? I'll be back tomorrow. No money, and I'm changing the locks." I slumped against the doorframe as she walked away grumbling. I rushed back into the room and began frantically stuffing everything I owned into bags. The fake designer purses, the cheap jewelry, the makeup. By 3 in the afternoon, I was at a second-hand market. The owner poked at my pile of bags with a look of pure disgust. "These are terrible fakes. I wouldn't even give you 500 for the lot." I gritted my teeth. 1,000. Take it, or I'm going to the next shop. After some haggling, we found a single authentic piece buried in the pile, a genuine Chanel bag. I didn't even remember where it came from. Probably a gift from some rich guy I'd met. The owner paid 30,000 for it. Combined with the other junk, I walked away with 33,000 yuan. I didn't waste a second. I transferred the back rent to the landlady and sent her a message. "Rent is paid. We're moving out at the end of the month. Don't bother us." I couldn't afford to stay in this hellhole for another day. Meanwhile, Duan Yin was walking through the neighborhood. He had just picked up a new uniform from his security job and wanted to drop it off before heading to the construction site. Near the stairs, he ran into Old Wang, a neighbor who loved to gossip. Hey, Xiao Duan, Old Wang said, leaning in. Your girlfriend caused a scene again. Duan Yin stopped, his brow furrowing. What happened? The landlady was screaming at your door at noon, Old Wang said with a look of pity. Said you guys haven't paid rent in 4 months. I see how hard you work, kid. Where does all that money go? Duan Yin stood frozen. For months? He gave me the rent money every single month on time. I always told him it was paid and that the rest went toward groceries. He worked himself to the bone. 5,500 a month as a security guard, another 5,000 moving boxes at a warehouse at night, plus whatever odd jobs he could find. He was making over 12,000 a month. It was my idea to move to the capital. I told him small towns had no future. I was the one who insisted on this expensive apartment, claiming it was better for finding work. He agreed to everything because he felt he owed me. I never worked. I just dressed up and went out every day, coming home late smelling like expensive perfume. He never asked questions. He thought I just liked pretty things. He thought it was normal for a girl to want a nice life, so he took the burden on himself. I walked toward the apartment carrying a takeout box, humming a little tune. I was in a great mood. I opened the door and flipped the light switch. The sudden brightness made us both blink. I jumped, nearly dropping my food. You're back? You said you had overtime tonight. Duan Yin didn't answer. He just stared at me with those dark, unreadable eyes. It made my skin crawl. Today, I wasn't wearing any makeup. I looked plain, hidden under an oversized jacket. I looked nothing like the girl who usually walked out of here in 10-centimeter heels and tight, sequin dresses. His gaze lingered on my face for a few seconds. Where were you? I tried to squeeze out a natural smile. Nowhere. Just walking around. I bought some dinner. I was going to tell him I bought him some noodles, too. Then I added, I was looking at apartments today. I found a cheaper one. And usually, he asked, what do you do every day when you go out? My smile froze. I usually spent my days in bars and clubs trying to trap a rich air. I couldn't say that. My brain scrambled for a lie, and my mouth moved before I could think. Looking for a job. I regretted it the moment the words left my lips. It was a pathetic excuse, and my stuttering voice made my guilt obvious. Duan Yan's lips curled into a faint, mocking arc. Looking for a job? While dressed like that? Coming home smelling like heavy perfume every night? You've been here 5 months. You still haven't found a suitable job? His voice was calm, which was worse. He knew. He knew I wasn't looking for work. He knew I was out wasting time and money. I wondered if he knew I was looking for his replacement, too. I could feel the rage simmering beneath his quiet exterior. The pressure was suffocating. I never forced you to work, he said after a long silence. I blinked, stunned. If you don't want to work, don't, he continued. But the neighbor said you haven't paid rent in 4 months. I give you at least 12,000 a month. What did you do with the money? I wasn't afraid of him asking about the money. I was afraid that if he kept digging, he'd find out exactly what I'd been doing. I couldn't let that happen. My eyes turned red instantly. I let the tears I'd been holding back flood out. I'm sorry, Duan Yin. I sobbed, my voice breaking. I'm so sorry. It's my fault. I came to this city and realized everything is so expensive. Too expensive. Our life here is worse than it was in the small town. I tried to find a job, but they were either too hard or paid too little, That's why I thought about going to a place like that. I whispered, my voice trembling. I heard the pay is high, just serving drinks, maybe a few drinks with customers, and you can make tens of thousands. Duan Yan's entire face froze. He wasn't a child. He knew exactly what kind of place I was talking about, especially looking at how I was dressed. I kept talking, letting the tears roll down my cheeks. I knew I looked pitiful. Duan Yin watched me, his expression unreadable. He had probably imagined 1,000 reasons for my behavior. He might have expected me to say I was scammed, or that there was an emergency back home. He might have even expected me to snap at him for not earning enough. But he never expected this. He never thought I'd consider that kind of work just because I was desperate for money. Suddenly, his phone buzzed. It was the landlady. Before Duan Yin could even say hello, her voice boomed through the receiver. Why did you transfer the rent to me again? She complained. I sent it back. Your girlfriend already paid me this afternoon. What is wrong with you two? First you don't pay for 4 months, then you both pay at once. If you had the money, you should have given it to me sooner instead of waiting for me to show up at your door. Yin apologized quietly and hung up. He looked at me, stunned. He had assumed I spent all the money he gave me. He thought I'd only managed to pay the rent by scrambling together loans from coworkers. He didn't realize the money was already there. He looked up, a question forming on his lips, but then his eyes shifted to the simple wardrobe in the corner. There was a hanging organizer there. It used to be bulging with my jewelry, expensive makeup, and perfumes. Now it was flat, empty. I had sold everything. He knew how much I treasured those things. Back then, I spent hours in front of the mirror every morning, obsessing over every necklace and earring. I used to say a woman had to treat herself well. Seeing those empty pockets, Yan's face softened with a complicated mix of emotions. I stood there, twisting the hem of my shirt, terrified of what he'd say next. But he just walked over and gently wiped the tears from my face. "I'm just afraid of you getting cheated out there," he said softly. His voice held a hint of helplessness. "Why are you crying? I'm not scolding you." I froze. I thought he'd be furious about the wasted money, but he wasn't. He glanced at the clock on the wall. "I'll eat with you before I head out," he said. "Don't you have to work?" I asked, still sobbing. "An hour late won't matter. Don't order takeout. I'll just boil some noodles." I remembered the bags in my hand and quickly set them on the coffee table. I actually bought this for you. I thought you'd be hungry when you got back tonight." I opened the containers. 2 portions of stir-fried rice noodles, still steaming. I couldn't bring myself to look him in the eye. Yin stared at the noodles, his Adam's apple bobbing as he swallowed. I had never cared about him like this before. I never asked if he was hungry or tired, let alone bought him late-night snacks. He picked up his chopsticks and took a bite. I sat down and joined him, eating in silence. The only sound was the clatter of plastic against wood. "Where did you sell your stuff?" he asked suddenly. I swallowed a mouthful of noodles. "A second-hand luxury shop." "How much did you get?" $33,000, I replied. They drove the price down a lot. Yin knew those items were bought with years of savings. Back in our hometown, I'd earn $2,000 a month and save for half a year just for one necklace. He didn't know much about brands or fakes, but he knew I'd paid for them with real blood and sweat. Now, it was all gone for $33,000. He looked at me, realizing that since I'd followed him to this city, my quality of life had only plummeted. He put his chopsticks down. "If you want to buy more later?" He paused. He knew his salary only left him with a few thousand after rent. He didn't know how to finish the sentence. "I won't buy that stuff anymore," I said firmly. "Living in the city is too expensive. I can't live like I did back in the small town." Yin lowered his eyes. "If there's extra money, buy what you want. Just don't go looking for work in those places. If you don't want to work, just stay home. The management company is promoting me to security captain next month. That's an extra $2,000. It should be enough for you." I had so much I wanted to say, but he finished his food in 2 quick bites and stood up. "I'm going to work now," he said. "Be careful," I whispered. "Stay safe on the road." "Yeah, go to sleep early." The door clicked shut. I slumped into my chair and let out a long, shaky breath. One lie always leads to another. I felt frustrated. I felt like I should have handled it better, but then again, if I were that smart, I wouldn't be a girl from a small-town vocational school. I'd be at a top university. I stood up and started cleaning. I threw away the trash, wiped the table, and scrubbed the floors. I even cleaned the kitchen and bathroom. I had never been this hardworking. Before, I thought chores were his job and looking pretty was mine. Not anymore. I had to show him I was contributing. I finished the floors, changed the trash bags, and took them out to the bin. After a quick shower, I lay in bed, tossing and turning. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. Just 6 months. Once I got the money, I'd go back to my hometown. A girl like me didn't belong in these high society circles anyway. I forced myself to sleep. Yin came home at 3:30 a.m. He opened the door quietly, intending to clean up before bed as usual. But he stopped in his tracks. The house was spotless. The table was dust-free, the floor gleamed, and even the stove was sparkling. He stood in the doorway, staring at our home that suddenly felt like a different place. I was lying on my side, my back to the door, breathing steadily. He watched me for a long moment before moving through the dark to wash up. He kept the water pressure low and set his cup down gently. He climbed into bed, and the mattress sank slightly. In my half-sleep, I moved over to give him space. My mind was foggy. I wanted to tell him about the apartment I'd found, but I figured he was exhausted. It could wait until tomorrow. Suddenly, I felt something cold on my wrist. Metal against skin. That icy, sharp sensation shot through my nerves. I snapped my eyes open, my heart hammering like a drum. A flash of white light exploded in my mind. It felt exactly like the moment before I drowned in my past life. The feeling of handcuffs locking around my wrists. Cold. Hard. Unyielding. My breath hitched as I bolted upright. What's wrong? Duan Yan's voice came from the dark, thick with sleep. I looked down. In the faint moonlight filtering through the window, I saw it. It wasn't handcuffs. It was a thin, delicate bracelet. The gold chain shimmered softly in the shadows, and a tiny four-leaf clover charm dangled against my skin. I looked up at him, stunned. Where did this come from? I bought it, he said. I stared at the bracelet, my heart still racing, trying to catch my breath. We were supposed to be saving money. I told him he shouldn't have bought the bracelet, but Duan Yin didn't answer. He just stared at my wrist. The four-leaf clover charm dangled against my bone, the gold chain looking delicate against my pale skin. I had small wrists, and the jewelry made them look elegant, almost fragile. Maybe that was why he liked it. He thought I belonged in things like this. It wasn't that expensive, he said softly. I opened my mouth to argue, but the words died in my throat. I turned away, trying to go back to sleep, but the adrenaline from being startled wouldn't fade. I cleared my throat. I told the landlord already. I'm moving out next month. His fingers went still. I started talking faster, the words tumbling out before he could stop me. I told him I'd found a place in the urban village for $4,000 a month. We could save half our rent. It's a good place, I insisted. It's not as new as this, but it's enough for us. The silence in the dark room lasted for several long seconds. We don't need to move, Duan Yin finally said. This place is fine. I blinked, confused. This place was $8,000 a month. That was a fortune. I told him again that we needed to save. He turned on his side to face me. Don't worry about saving, he said firmly. I can earn more. Just do whatever you want to do. The next morning, I woke up to find him already gone. He'd left breakfast on the coffee table, and the buns were still warm. I took a few bites, but my mind was still on that apartment. $4,000 saved every month meant $24,000 in half a year. I couldn't let it go. I wiped my mouth and called the agent, a man named Wang Ge. He sounded eager and told me to meet him at the village. It took me 2 hours on the bus to get there. The sky was a dull, dusty gray. The buildings were packed so tightly together they looked like they were suffocating, with power lines tangled overhead like a massive spiderweb. Below, the street was lined with breakfast stalls, the smell of heavy oil mixing with the stench of overflowing trash cans. I saw a dead cockroach on the pavement. Wang Ge waved me over from an alleyway. I followed him in, my shoe crunching down on a slimy, rotten cabbage leaf. The stairwell was pitch black because the motion sensor lights were broken. I had to feel my way up the rough, damp walls. We squeezed past piles of cardboard boxes and old bike tires until we reached the 3rd floor. When he opened the door, the smell of mold hit me like a wall. The room was tiny, barely 15 square meters. The bed was shoved against the wall, and the window looked directly into the wall of the next building. The sky was just a thin sliver of light. I walked to the window and realized I could see a man in the opposite building brushing his teeth. The kitchen was just a small stove near the door, and the toilet was right next to it, separated only by a thin, flimsy plastic curtain. Great value, the agent chirped. Private bathroom and a kitchen. I stood there, unable to move. Suddenly, the room started to shrink. A memory from my past life slammed into me. I remembered living in a hole exactly like this after I lost everything. I remembered the landlord, a man in his 50s who always looked at me with predatory eyes. I remembered sending out hundreds of resumes only to be rejected because I had been out of the field for too long. I remembered being so desperate that I tried to extort money from Duan Yin and his wealthy wife. That was the mistake that killed me. Her suitor had tracked me down and promised me money to disappear. Instead, they took me out on a boat and threw me into the dark water. I snapped back to the present, my palms soaking wet with sweat. The agent was still talking, but I didn't hear a word. I looked at the cramped, suffocating room and felt a wave of pure terror. I couldn't live like this again. I wouldn't. I'll think about it, I managed to choke out. I went home and waited. Around 9 that night, Duan Yin returned. He walked in and saw me lying on the bed, staring at my phone. "Did you eat?" he asked. I told him I had. He took off his coat, his movements deliberate. "The agent called me," he said, his voice neutral. "He said he took you to see a place. Do you still want to move?" I gave a weak, forced laugh. "I was just looking," I muttered. He sat on the edge of the bed and looked at me. "Why didn't you rent it?" I bit my lip, picking at the edge of the blanket. I couldn't tell him the truth. I couldn't tell him I was terrified of being poor again. It just didn't feel right, I said, keeping my head down. Duan Yin watched me for a moment. Then he actually chuckled. What wasn't right? Was the furniture too old? Was the kitchen so greasy you could scrape 2 pounds of oil off the walls? I blinked, looking up at him. Or was it because the window faced a wall and there was no sunlight? He continued. Or maybe the smell was just too much? I was stunned. How do you know all that? He smiled, a rare, genuine expression. The agent sent me photos of those village apartments, too. I was speechless. He leaned in closer, his eyes dancing with a bit of mischief. It was too trashy for you, wasn't it? You couldn't handle living there. My face turned bright red. I didn't say that. Then why not rent it? I scrambled for an excuse, but nothing came. I just rubbed the edge of the sheet, my voice getting smaller and smaller. I'll look for a better one tomorrow, I whispered, though even I knew how ridiculous I sounded. I had spent all night talking about saving money, and now I was rejecting the cheap option because it wasn't nice enough. I looked at him and saw him leaning back against the headboard. The warm light from the bedside lamp cast soft shadows across his face. Usually, he looked like a statue, cold, distant, and unapproachable. But right now, his features were soft. The sharp lines of his face had relaxed, and there was a playful glint in his eyes like he had caught me in a lie but wasn't going to punish me for it. What are you laughing at? I grumbled, reaching out to push his shoulder. He didn't move. He just grabbed my hand, his grip firm and warm. Nothing, he said, his smile widening. I tried to pull my hand back, but he tugged, using my momentum to pull me down onto the bed. I fell forward, crashing right into his chest. The scent of laundry detergent and warm skin filled my nose. I froze, my heart hammering against my ribs. He wrapped his arms around me, resting his chin on the top of my head. You said you wanted to save money, he whispered, his voice vibrating through his chest. But you were the first one who couldn't take it. I buried my face in his shirt, too embarrassed to say a single word. I didn't expect the place to be that run down. Duan Yin burst out laughing, and I could feel the vibrations in his chest. It made my own heart skip a beat. I tried to push him away, but I couldn't budge him. Eventually, I gave up and just lay there against him, motionless. The room fell silent, save for the sound of our breathing. One breath, then another, overlapping in the quiet air. Duan Yin ran his fingers through my hair, his fingertips grazing the back of my neck. A shiver ran down my spine. My heart started racing even faster. I tried to sit up, but he pressed down on my shoulder. Don't move, he whispered. I'm turned on. I froze. Hearing him say something like that in such a calm, matter-of-fact voice made my whole body feel like it was on fire. It wasn't that we hadn't been intimate before. Duan Yin had always been energetic in that department. But counting my previous life, we had been broken up for a very long time. If he actually wanted to do it now, I wouldn't be able to get into the mood. My head was still filled with the image of his face from the future, that cold, mocking look he gave me after he found out the truth. Fortunately, he didn't seem to have any immediate intentions. Those places in the urban villages are all the same on the outside, Duan Yin said, his voice low and slightly raspy. If the interior looks too nice, it's probably a scam or a fake renovation. I blinked, surprised by his insight. Don't settle, he said, finally letting go and letting me sit up. Since we told the landlord we aren't renewing, we'll look for a better place next month. I sat up straight and looked at him. A better place will be more expensive. It's fine. We won't share with roommates anymore, Duan Yin said casually. We'll find a 1-bedroom just for the 2 of us. I opened my mouth to protest, but he sat up and cut me off. My salary is going up by 2,000. It's enough. But don't overthink it, he said calmly. I'm going to go wash up. I hesitated. I really couldn't stand the environment of those slums anyway. I figured once I found a job, I could help with the rent. It would only be for a few months. Once Duan Yin returned to the wealthy Duan family, I planned to head back to my small hometown. With that thought in mind, I nodded. I didn't want to suffer more than I had to. By the time Duan Yin finished his shower, I was already drifting off. Suddenly, my phone vibrated. I reached for it bleary-eyed and saw a text from an unknown number. "It's been so long since you looked for me. Found someone new." The sleepiness vanished instantly. My heart missed a beat. Duan Yin was about to blow-dry his hair when he saw my expression change. "Who's that from?" he asked. I quickly darkened the screen, my palms sweating. "No one. Just an ad." He didn't push it and started the dryer. I stared at the black screen, my fingers trembling. I opened the message and deleted it. I knew that tone. It had to be one of the rich guys I used to scout at high-end clubs. But in my past life, no one had ever sent me a message like this. I racked my brain trying to figure out who it could be, but I couldn't pin it down. To be honest, with my looks, I could usually land a wealthy guy if I wanted to. But I was picky. I didn't want anyone too old, too ugly, or to be a mistress. Those 3 rules disqualified most people. Young, rich, and handsome guys usually had plenty of high-quality options. I didn't have much of an edge there. That was why I never found a backup before my lies to Duan Yin were exposed. Then I remembered the second-hand dealer mentioning a genuine Chanel bag. I frowned, trying to remember who had given me that. My phone vibrated again. "Baby, you've become so cold. Ignoring me now." I deleted it and blocked the number in one swift motion. Duan Yin noticed my jumpy behavior and realized it wasn't just spam. "Let me see your phone," he said. My heart hammered like a drum. "See what?" Duan Yin didn't say a word. He just held out his hand, palm up. I bit my lip, my fingers tightening around the device. The air in the room felt like it had frozen. After a few seconds of silence, I looked up at him, my eyes welling with tears. It's a debt collector," I lied. "I owe over 1,000 on my credit account and haven't paid it back." Duan Yin hadn't expected that. He paused, sighed, and pulled out his own phone to transfer money to me. "If you want to buy something, tell me. Don't use those credit apps anymore. How much do you owe in total?" "Just 1,500, I stammered. He transferred 1,800 to me. I felt a wave of relief that he bought the lie. "You don't need to send that much," I said. "You haven't even gotten your paycheck yet. Will you have enough for food?" Duan Yin looked at the remaining 150 yuan in his account. He figured he could survive for half a month if he was frugal. He didn't mind for himself, but he felt I should have a better life. He locked his screen without showing me the balance. "Don't worry," he said. "I have money." Over the next few days, I spent so much time on my phone that I almost wore out the screen. I scoured job apps, sent resumes, and waited for replies. My education was only a vocational degree, which didn't mean much in a competitive city like Beijing. Out of 20 applications, most went unanswered. The high-paying ones were all in the entertainment industry, which I wanted to avoid. Finally, after 2 days, a small chain clinic contacted me for a receptionist position. The pay was low, but I only planned to work for 6 months to show Duan Yin I was trying. Plus, I was familiar with the work. I pushed my flashy dresses aside and picked out a white shirt and black trousers. I looked in the mirror, wiped off my bright lipstick for a pale balm, and tied my hair into a low ponytail. I wanted to look like a proper worker. At 2 p.m., I arrived at the Boei Medical Clinic. It was on the 2nd floor of a commercial building. A nurse at the front desk told me the director was busy. I stood to the side, looking around. The place was simple, with health posters on the walls and plastic chairs in the waiting area. 10 minutes later, a woman in her 50s walked out. She wore a white coat and had her hair pulled back neatly. "Are you Rong Jiqiao?" "Yes," I said, standing up straight. She looked me up and down. "Do you have your documents?" I pulled my ID and nursing certificate from my bag and handed them over. She examined them closely, then looked back at me. I kept my hands at my sides, standing as straight as I could. "Where did you work before?" I bit my lip. "I just arrived in Beijing this year. I worked as a nurse at a hospital in my hometown, Liang County." The director frowned. "A county hospital?" I felt my heart tighten, knowing she looked down on it. "I'm a fast learner," I promised. "I can handle hard work." She didn't respond, flipping through my papers again. My palms began to sweat. Finally, she handed them back, looking somewhat dissatisfied. "But for 3,500 yuan, She probably knew she couldn't be too picky. Fine. Start next Monday, 8 a.m. sharp. Don't be late. I blinked, then realized I got the job. Thank you, director. I walked out of the clinic and took a deep breath. The sunlight felt warm and welcoming. I pulled out my phone to call Duan Yin, but I stopped halfway. He was probably at the construction site and wouldn't be able to answer. I decided to go find him instead. I turned toward the subway station, remembering the location he had mentioned. Duan Yin had been working odd jobs at a construction site lately. I knew the general location, so I took the subway for over an hour and walked another 20 minutes to get there. The site was surrounded by tin fences. From inside, I could hear the roar of heavy machinery and the shouting of workers. I stood at the entrance, peering through the dust. I didn't see him. Just as I was wondering if I should go inside, a group of workers walked out. They were covered in dirt, their clothes gray with dust. I scanned their faces, but Duan Yin wasn't among them. I waited a bit longer. A second wave of workers emerged. This time I saw him. He was walking at the very back, holding a white plastic lunchbox. The container was filled with plain white rice. It looked bare. There were no side dishes, no meat, nothing. He walked to a patch of open ground near the site and found a flat stone to sit on. He opened the lid and pulled a small packet of pickled vegetables from his pocket. He tore it open and poured the salty greens over his rice. Standing in the distance, I froze. My chest felt tight. Duan Yin picked up his chopsticks and took a bite of the rice mixed with pickles. Another worker walked over, also holding a lunchbox. Xiao Duan, just eating that, the man asked. Duan Yin looked up. Yeah, it's enough. The worker shook his head. He reached into his own box and picked out 2 pieces of braised pork, dropping them into Duan Yin's bowl. Eat some meat. You can't do this kind of work without strength. Duan Yin tried to push the meat back, but the man waved him off. Don't be polite. My wife made too much. Duan Yin paused, then lowered his head. Thanks. The worker smiled and walked away. Duan Yin sat there and slowly ate those 2 pieces of meat. My throat felt constricted. I remembered when he transferred 1,800 yuan to me. He told me he still had money. If he had money, why couldn't he even afford a side dish? I turned around and ran toward a street stall near the construction site entrance. Boss, how much for a lunchbox? 15 yuan. I want this one, and this one, I said, pointing at the dishes behind the glass. And please, add extra meat. The owner packed it up quickly and handed it to me. I paid and walked back. Duan Yin was still sitting on that stone, head down, shoveling rice into his mouth. I walked up and stopped right in front of him. He looked up and froze. I was wearing a white shirt and black trousers, my hair tied in a low ponytail. The wind had blown a few stray hairs across my forehead. My makeup was light, just a touch of pale lipstick. Compared to the heavy, flashy looks I used to wear, I looked clean. Simple. I stood there in the swirling dust of the construction site, my white sleeves catching a bit of dirt. I could feel the other workers staring. To them, I probably looked like I belonged in a different world. Duan Yin put down his chopsticks. He instinctively wiped his hands on his pants. Why are you here? I shoved the warm lunchbox into his hands. I bought you some food. Duan Yin looked at me, then at the box. The workers nearby started whispering. Hey, Xiao Duan, is that your girlfriend? She's beautiful. You're a lucky man. My face flushed red. I looked down, staying silent. Duan Yin actually smiled, a rare, peaceful expression I hadn't seen much before. He opened the container. Braised pork, stir-fried eggs with green peppers, and fresh greens. He picked up his chopsticks, but didn't eat yet. Did you eat? He asked. I already ate. I lied. Go on, eat while it's hot. He took a bite of the pork. I sat down on the ground next to him, watching him. I found a job. What kind of job? A receptionist at a clinic, I said. The base salary is 3,500. They provide lunch, and there are no night shifts. Duan Yin looked at me intently. I start next week, I added with a smile. I can earn my own money now. You don't have to be so stingy with yourself anymore. Duan Yin's expression shifted. Why did you bother looking for a job? I just wanted to help carry the load, I said, pointing at his original lunchbox filled with pickles. Look at what you're eating. He followed my gaze and went quiet for a moment. I just haven't been paid yet. But you clearly have no money left, yet you still transferred so much to me. He didn't answer. He just went back to eating. I wanted him to understand that I could be independent, that I didn't need to spend every cent he had. Suddenly, he stood up. He was nearly a head taller than me. Standing against the afternoon sun, his silhouette looked sharp and hard. The dust had turned his dark t-shirt a dull gray, but his shoulders were perfectly straight. His features looked deep and cold in the light. When he didn't speak, he looked like a piece of unyielding stone. "Fine," he said shortly. He patted the dust off his pants and turned back toward the site. I sat on that rock and watched his back. Something felt wrong. The softness he had shown me lately seemed to vanish. He was turning cold again. On Monday, I reported to the clinic. The director, a woman named Lynn, spent half an hour lecturing me on the rules. The clinic was small. During my shift, there were only 2 doctors and 3 nurses. The work wasn't physically exhausting, but I had to talk constantly. I took blood pressure, handled registrations, and led patients to the exam rooms. I stood for 8 hours straight. A few days later, Duan Yan's salary from his security job arrived. I was washing dishes when my phone buzzed on the counter. I wiped my hands and picked it up. A transfer from Duan Yan, 7,500 yuan. It was his entire paycheck. He must have gotten a raise or a bonus, but he hadn't kept a single cent for himself. I felt a wave of confusion. I was trying so hard to change, to act like a virtuous, caring partner. Why did he still seem unhappy? If I wanted to stay in his good graces before he was reclaimed by his wealthy family, I had to figure out what was bothering him. My future depended on the mood of this hidden prince. That night, I went all out on dinner. I bought pork ribs and simmered them for over an hour with potatoes until the sauce was thick and rich. I made stir-fried peppers and a cold cucumber salad. When Duan Yin came home, the kitchen was still filled with steam. He changed his shoes at the door and looked toward the kitchen. "You cooked?" "Yes. Come eat while it's hot." I carried the heavy pot out and set it on the table. He washed his hands and sat down. He picked up a rib and started eating. I watched him from the corner of my eye. He kept reaching for more, and my heart relaxed a little. After a few bites, he poured his rice directly into the pot to soak up the leftover gravy. I wanted to laugh, but I held it in. "Is it good?" "MHM." I pushed the cucumber salad toward him. "Eat this too, it'll cut through the grease." He took a bite and kept eating. I waited for the right moment to talk, sensing he was in a better mood. But then his phone rang. He answered, spoke briefly, and hung up. "The place where I do part-time work is short-staffed," he said. "I'm going to go help out." I swallowed the words I had prepared. "Oh, okay. When will you be back?" "Not sure." He finished his rice in a few quick gulps, grabbed his jacket, and walked out the door. I cleaned up the dishes and waited, but he didn't return. Eventually, I decided to shower and go to bed. While I was in the middle of washing, the water heater suddenly went silent. I froze. I reached out to test the spray. The water was turning ice cold. I cranked the handle to the maximum, hoping it was just a pressure issue, but the stream only grew thinner. The hot water cut out completely. Right then, I heard the front door open. Duan Yin was back. I pressed my body against the bathroom door and called out, my voice muffled. "Duan Yin." A sliver of light cut through the gap under the door. His footsteps grew closer. "What is it?" "The hot water is gone," I said. "Can you check the heater?" There was a brief pause. "Okay." His footsteps faded away. I stood there in the shower, shivering and hugging my arms. The tiles were freezing. I shifted onto the bath mat, standing on my tiptoes to keep my feet off the cold floor. My hair was still full of shampoo, and cold droplets were trickling down the back of my neck. I'd been standing there too long. I tried to step back, but my heel hit a patch of water that had splashed onto the floor. The edge of the mat folded over. My foot slipped. I tumbled to the right, my hand lunging for the towel rack to break my fall. I caught it, but my ankle twisted sharply. I gasped, the pain lancing through my leg. I collapsed against the wall, sliding down until I was huddled on the floor. "Ji Qiao." Duan Yin called from outside. He must have heard the thud. I gritted my teeth, reaching for a bath towel to cover myself. I twisted my ankle. Can you come in and help me?" Silence lasted for about 2 seconds. Then the door opened. Duan Yin stepped inside. His eyes swept the floor and found me huddled in the corner. My wet hair was plastered to my face, and my hand was still white-knuckled around the towel rack. He took 2 steps toward me and knelt down. "Where?" he asked. "My right foot," I whispered. Before I could finish, his hand was already supporting my calf. His fingers pressed gently around the edge of my ankle. I let out a sharp breath. It hurts. Duan Yin set my foot back down and stood up. I'll carry you out. We should go to the hospital. I don't think the bone is broken, I said. It just stings. I'll get you a stool to sit on then, he decided. I'll fix the heater. Rinse off the soap first, and when you're out, I'll help you with some medicine. Okay. He stepped out and returned with a small chair. With his support, I managed to sit down, clutching my towel tightly. The bathroom light was bright and clinical. I kept my head down, staring at the collar of his shirt. My ears felt like they were on fire. Duan Yin didn't say anything else. He turned back to the water heater. After a moment, I heard the familiar click of the ignition. This heater does this a lot, he said, knocking on the bathroom door. It's old. Go ahead and finish your shower. Okay. Do you need help? I froze. It took me a second to process what he meant. Was he asking if I needed help? Washing? My brain felt like it was buzzing. My face turned a deep shade of crimson. I can do it myself. I blurted out. MHM. His voice sounded completely innocent, like he was just being practical. I stayed in the bathroom, rubbing my burning ears. I had no idea that on the other side of the door, Duan Yin was wearing a faint, silent smile. I turned the shower back on. As the warm water hit me, it took a long time for me to realize I was still clutching the towel. I hung it back up and closed my eyes, letting the heat wash away the embarrassment. When I finally came out, Duan Yin was still waiting. I was wrapped in my towel, hair dripping, leaning against the doorframe because I couldn't put weight on my foot. He looked at me, leaned down, and picked me up again. He carried me to the bed. Even through the thick towel, I could feel the warmth of his palms. He sat me on the edge of the mattress and pulled out a tube of ointment. I sat there, damp and warm, while he slowly rubbed the medicine into my skin. His movements were slow, maybe a little too slow. Duan Yin had always been cold and hard to read. Even in my past life, after knowing him for so long, I never truly understood him. Once he returned to the Duan family, and our statuses became worlds apart, that feeling only deepened. Because of his stoic nature, I didn't realize anything was wrong at first. I just thought he was being thorough. Finally, I couldn't help but ask, "Are you done?" MHM, he grunted softly. He set my foot down. "We'll see how it looks tomorrow. If it's worse, we go to the hospital." I breathed a sigh of relief. Then he asked a question that made my heart stop. "Do we have any peaches left?" I blinked, my brain stalling. No, we're out." Duan Yin tilted his head, his gaze lingering on my face. "Didn't we just buy a box last month?" My face felt like it was going to spontaneously combust. I bit my lip. My ankle gave a sudden throb of pain, giving me the perfect excuse. "My foot hurts. Let's just, not tonight." Duan Yin's voice remained perfectly flat. I didn't mean we had to do it tonight. I wanted to curl into a ball and disappear. He was just asking a question. "Do you think I'm that much of a monster?" he asked. There was a rare hint of teasing in his tone. I stuttered through a few half-sentences, unable to find an answer. Thankfully, he let me off the hook and grabbed the hairdryer to dry my hair. Once I was dry, he turned off the lights and lay down beside me. I closed my eyes and pretended to be fast asleep, terrified he'd realize I wasn't actually that tired. The next day, my foot felt a bit better. I went to work as usual. The clinic wasn't busy. Zhu Xiaoye, the other receptionist, was scrolling through her phone and sipping tea. She looked up and smiled when she saw me limping. "What happened to your foot?" I changed into my uniform. "Twisted it last night." She leaned in closer. "Is it serious? Did you go to the hospital?" "It's fine. I'm here, aren't I?" "Did your boyfriend drop you off?" she asked. "Yeah." "What does he do for a living?" I paused for a split second. "He's a security guard." Zhu Xiaoye's smile stiffened for a heartbeat before she let out a forced, "Oh." She took a sip of her water and sat back, her warmth evaporating instantly. "Security? That's stable, I guess." She went back to her phone and didn't look at me for the rest of the morning. I knew exactly what she was thinking. She decided right then that Duan Yin and I were nobodies, not worth her time beyond basic politeness. When it was time to head home, she approached me again. "Where do you live?" I gave her the address. "Rent isn't cheap over there, is it?" she asked, propping her chin on her hand. Can your boyfriend afford that on his own? I packed my bag. We share the rent. She laughed. That makes sense. Less pressure. She paused, then pivoted. My boyfriend's family owns an apartment in the second ring road. I looked up at her. He says we'll get married in a couple of years, she continued. The house and car are already waiting. That's impressive, I said, playing along. What does he do? He's an investment. His family has money, she said, trying to sound humble. If this had been my past life, I wouldn't have been able to help myself. I would have started competing with her, bragging about things I didn't have. But I didn't plan on staying at this clinic for long. There was no point in winning a petty argument. I'm so jealous, I said simply. That was all she needed. Flattered, she started chatting away, dragging me into a long, one-sided conversation. I nodded along, my mind drifting elsewhere. When the shift ended, a Mercedes-Benz pulled up. It was her boyfriend. Whether out of genuine kindness or a desire to show off, she looked at my limp and said, "It's hard for you to walk. Let us give you a lift." A free ride was better than the crowded subway. I accepted and hobbled toward the car. The investment boyfriend saw my face and froze. He stared at me for several long seconds before snapping out of it and eagerly opening the door for me. "Is this your colleague?" he asked Xiaoya, his voice suddenly very polite. None of us noticed the man on the other side of the road. Duan Yin was sitting on his electric scooter, watching us, having arrived early to pick me up. Duan Yin arrived at the clinic early. He sat on his electric scooter across the street, watching me. He saw my back as I prepared to climb into that black Mercedes. I didn't see him, but he saw everything. His throat tightened as he watched that man eagerly hold the door open for me, smiling and chatting. The sunset reflected off the car's polished surface, the glare sharp and blinding. I stood by the car door, looking down. The evening wind blew dust into my eyes, making me squint. My face was cold, like it was covered in a thin layer of ice. Duan Yin stared at that car, motionless, his eyes empty of expression but fixed on me. He remembered what I told him a few days ago. I said I wanted to help share the burden. But here I was, still living in that small, shared rental with him while looking at better options. He watched for a few more seconds, then gripped the handlebars and turned his scooter around. He rode away in the opposite direction before I could spot him. Back at the car, Zhu Xiaoya's attitude shifted the moment she saw how her boyfriend was looking at me. Her enthusiasm vanished. She realized that even though I had a boyfriend, I was still a threat to her. "I just remembered," Xiaoya said, her voice suddenly sharp. "The second ring road is a nightmare this time of day. You'd probably get home faster if you took the subway." I wasn't born yesterday. I knew exactly what she was doing. I looked at the comfortable car and felt a pang of regret, but I just smiled. "You're right. I totally forgot about the traffic. You guys go ahead, the subway is definitely faster." Her boyfriend looked like he wanted to argue, but Xiaoya shoved him into the driver's seat. "Let's go. If we stay here any longer, we'll get a ticket." As they drove off, the boyfriend kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror. Xiaoya was fuming in the passenger seat. "What are you looking at? She's a total airhead. Her boyfriend is just a security guard, and she's still stuck on him. If it wasn't for her face, she wouldn't even have a job." "What are you talking about?" her boyfriend lied. "I was just trying to be nice because she's your colleague. I made it home and cooked a simple dinner." Duan Yin wasn't back yet. I covered the food, took a shower, and crawled into bed. I was drifting off to sleep when I heard the click of the lock. Duan Yin was home. I kept my eyes shut. I heard him in the kitchen, the soft clink of chopsticks against a porcelain bowl. He was eating the food I left for him. The sound was quiet and rhythmic. After he finished, he washed the dishes and walked over to the bed. I rolled over, pretending to be asleep. He didn't say a word. I heard him pull a small box from his pocket and set it on the nightstand. I opened my eyes and sat up. "You're back," I said. He pointed at the box. "For you." I opened it and froze. Inside was a silver necklace with a tiny star pendant. It shimmered under the light. I picked it up, the chain dangling from my fingertips. "How much?" 5,000, he said. My hand shook. I almost dropped it. "That's so expensive." Duan Yin leaned against the headboard. "I got a bonus." My throat felt tight. I loved it, but I couldn't keep it. If I took this, I'd be draining him dry. I put the necklace back and closed the lid. It hurt, but I had to say it. "Take it back. I don't want it." He looked at me. "You don't like it?" I do like it, I whispered, biting my lip. Then why not? I pushed the box toward him. I told you, we don't need to buy expensive things right now. It's not expensive, he said. I was worried you'd think it was too cheap. I stared at the box, my fingers curling into my palms. He stood up to grab clean clothes from the closet. With his back to me, he spoke again. I was afraid if it was cheap, you'd think I was stingy. I felt like there was a ball of cotton stuck in my throat. I couldn't find my voice. I tried to think fast. No, not at all. I just think we should be saving money. Before, you used to spend every cent you made. Why the sudden change? Duan Yin froze. His voice went cold. Why do you suddenly want to save money? My heart skipped a beat. I forgot that in my past life, I was a total spendthrift. Clothes, makeup, tea. I'd blow through my paycheck in days. I can save money, I stammered. How else would I have paid for your medical bills? I had to double down on the lie. There was no going back now. He didn't question me. He just nodded. True. He sat back down on the bed and opened the box again. He lifted the necklace, watching the silver chain swing. If we're going to have a life together, we need savings. Exactly, I said, trying to seize the moment. You're right, he agreed. He looked up at me. When we get married, we'll need even more. My smile turned stiff. Marriage? I wasn't that delusional. I knew I was just a placeholder. Once he found his real savior, I'd be out on the street. But Duan Yin didn't know what I was thinking. Since I already bought it, just keep it, he said. My heart felt heavy, but I tucked the necklace away. Just don't buy anything else next time. He went to shower. When he came out, I was lying on my stomach, scrolling through my phone. I was kicking my legs back and forth, laughing at a video. He stood by the bed, water dripping from his hair onto his shoulders. What are you watching? Just a short video, I said without looking up. What's so funny? I looked up, my eyes bright. This is hilarious. Look, I handed him the phone. In the video, a woman looked panicked while a man stood in the doorway, pale as a ghost. She cheated on him, I explained. And he caught her. Duan Yin stared at the screen. The man in the video was shaking. Why do you want a divorce? The man asked. If you cheated, just break up with her. Why involve me? Asterisk. I burst out laughing. Look at this guy. He's totally obsessed with her. Duan Yin handed the phone back, a faint, tight smile on his lips. Yeah. I watched the clip one more time, my laughter echoing in the small room. I tossed the phone aside and rolled onto my back. Don't you think guys like that are just stupid? Duan Yin's voice was cold. He's just a man who doesn't have the ability to keep his wife. He knows she has better places to go, so he clings to her. I thought about it. It made sense from his perspective. I nodded thoughtfully, not realizing there was a deeper meaning behind his words. I guess you're right. He didn't say anything else. He was never much of a talker anyway. The next morning, Duan Yin was gone by the time I woke up. The subway was packed. People shoved me around, and my ankle started to ache again. When I finally reached the clinic, Zhu Xiaoya was already at the front desk, clipping her nails. She looked up at me as I walked in. You're here. I changed into my uniform. Yeah. Zhu Xiaoya blew on her nails, not looking up. Is your foot any better? A lot better, I replied. That's good. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. A patient is coming in for an exam soon. Take them to the 3rd floor for me. My nails aren't up to code yet, and the director told me to trim them first. I paused. Aren't you the one responsible for registrations and guiding patients? She spread her hands, showing off her half-finished manicure. I'm not done yet, am I? Just help me out this once. I knew she had been working here a long time. I didn't want to cause trouble on my first few days, so I let it go. I turned and headed to the waiting area. The patient was a woman in her 40s carrying a large bag. When she saw me, she stood up immediately. I need an exam. Where do I go? Follow me, I said. I led the way, every step sending a sharp sting through my injured ankle. I gritted my teeth and didn't make a sound. Once I got her into the exam room on the 3rd floor, I finally let out a breath of relief. When I got back to the front desk, Zhu Xiaoya was chatting with another nurse. Thanks a lot. I ignored her and sat down to organize the medical records. A few minutes later, a man slammed his hand on the desk, startling me. I've been waiting for almost an hour, he shouted. Why haven't I been called yet? Zhu Xiaoya jumped. Please, calm down. Let me check. She flipped through the registration slips and then looked at me, her brow furrowed. Did you enter this one? Why isn't it in the system? I looked up, confused. I never saw that slip. She frowned and pushed the paper toward me. Look for yourself. Is this your handwriting? I glanced at it. It wasn't mine. I didn't write this. The patient's temper flared. What kind of hospital is this? You're just passing the buck. I'm filing a complaint. Zhu Xiaoya started bowing and scraping. I'm so sorry, sir. We'll handle it right away. She leaned in and whispered to me. Just apologize. Don't let him make a scene. I took a deep breath. I didn't want to delay the man's treatment, so I stood up. I'm sorry. I'll process your information immediately. The man calmed down slightly. I re-entered his data and walked him to the consultation room. When I returned, Zhu Xiaoya was already back to gossiping with the other girls. All settled? She asked with a smirk. My voice was cold. You're so young, yet your memory is worse than my grandmother's. It's a bit pathetic, don't you think? The smile froze on her face. The other nurses turned to stare at us. What did you just say? Zhu Xiaoya's voice went up an octave. I didn't bother answering. I walked straight to the front desk computer and grabbed the mouse. What are you doing? She demanded, standing up. Checking the surveillance. My fingers moved fast. I found the footage from this morning within seconds. On the screen, Zhu Xiaoya was sitting at the desk. She took a slip from a patient, scribbled something, and then shoved it into a drawer without even opening the system. I clicked over to the operation logs and pointed at the monitor. Between 8 and 10 this morning, you were the only one logged into this account. The other nurses crowded around. That's not right, one whispered. Xiaoya, you said she was the one who messed up. Zhu Xiaoya bit her lip. I just remembered wrong. Is it really that big of a deal? Remembered wrong? I rewound the footage to the moment the patient was screaming at us. When I was taking the blame for you, why didn't you remember then? The head nurse walked out of her office, clutching a chart. What's all the noise about? Zhu Xiaoya immediately rubbed her eyes, her voice turning into a sob. Head nurse, I just made a small mistake, but she won't let it go. The head nurse stared at the screen for a few seconds. Her face darkened. Is Director Lin in? Yes, someone answered. Call her over. Director Lin arrived quickly. After reviewing the footage and the logs, she didn't hesitate. Zhu Xiaoya, your bonus for the month is gone. Tears actually started streaming down Xiaoya's face. Director, Enough. Director Lin cut her off. Shifting blame in front of a patient is a disaster for our reputation. It's lucky Rong Jiqiao handled the patient first. She looked at Xiaoya sternly. Apologized to her. Zhu Xiaoya stood there, trembling. I'm sorry, she muttered, her voice barely a whisper. After the director left, Xiaoya sank into her chair, her shoulders shaking as she sobbed. I was speechless. I was the one who got blamed, yet she was the one crying. By the time I finished work, the sky was pitch black. The motion sensor light in my apartment hallway had been broken for weeks, and the property management still hadn't fixed it. I had to feel my way up the stairs in the dark. As I reached the third-floor landing, the smell of cigarette smoke hit me. A man was leaning against the wall. I slowed my pace. Oh, look who's back. Li Jian, the tenant from the other partitioned room, stepped out of the shadows. He held a half-burnt cigarette between his fingers. I frowned. Move. He didn't budge. Instead, he leaned closer. Home so late. Working overtime. The smell of smoke mixed with cheap alcohol made me want to gag. I tried to brush past him, but he threw his arm across the hallway, blocking my path. What's the rush? Let's chat. I took a step back. My boyfriend is waiting for me. Boyfriend? Li Jian laughed, his eyes scanning me up and down. You mean that security guard? I've seen him. How much can a guy like that even make in a month? My face went cold. That's none of your business. Hey, don't be like that. He dropped his cigarette and crushed it with his shoe. I just feel bad for you. A girl this pretty shouldn't be suffering with a broke guard. He leaned in even closer, his voice dropping to a greasy whisper. Why don't you follow me instead? I'm in sales. I make at least $20,000 a month. I'm a lot better than that boyfriend of yours. I felt a chill run down my spine. My voice shook. If you don't move, I'm calling the police. He chuckled and finally stepped aside. Little sister has a temper. Fine. I'll let you go. I hurried past him, my hands shaking so hard I could barely find my keys. You won't get anywhere with that loser, he called out behind me. You'll break up sooner or later. I fumbled with the lock and finally burst inside, slamming the door behind me. I leaned against the wood, my heart hammering against my ribs. The room was empty. Duanyan wasn't home yet. I peered through the peephole for a long time until I was sure nobody was outside. I tossed my bag on the sofa and checked the fridge. It was empty except for 2 eggs and half a cucumber. I leaned against the counter, replaying the encounter in my head. Should I tell Duanyan? I bit my lip. He was already so tired. He worked all day and took extra shifts at night. Did he really need to deal with this trashy neighbor too? I rubbed my face and decided to keep it to myself for now. I took a shower and crawled into bed. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Duanyan, * something came up. I'll be back late. Sleep first, *. I stared at the words. I started to type a reply, then deleted it. I just sent back, okay. The next morning, Duanyan finally returned. I was in the bathroom brushing my teeth when I heard the door. You're back. I called out. He was changing his shoes and gave a tired nod. Yeah. He looked exhausted. His eyes were bloodshot. I wanted to ask where he had been all night, but the words got stuck in my throat. I'll go buy some groceries. You should rest. He sat on the sofa. No need. I have to head out again in a bit. I blinked. Again. The property management office is short-staffed. I bit my lip, feeling a pang of guilt. At least eat something before you go. He waved me off. I'm not hungry. He leaned back on the sofa for a few minutes, then got up to wash his face. I stood by the kitchen door, watching his retreating back. My throat felt tight. He came out, changed into a clean shirt, and grabbed his jacket. I'm going, he said, and then he was gone. Watch your step, I called out as the door clicked shut. I stood there for a long time, staring at the plain wooden surface. My apartment felt too quiet. I turned toward the kitchen, opened the fridge, and took out the last 2 eggs. I boiled some noodles, dropped the eggs in, and ate in silence. Once the dishes were washed and dried, I changed into my work clothes. It was time to head out. The moment I opened the door, my heart dropped. Li Jian was standing in the hallway holding a takeout bag. I froze. He saw me and grinned. Oh, heading to work already? I didn't answer. I pulled the door shut, locked it, and tried to brush past him toward the stairs. Li Jian followed me. Hey, about yesterday. I had a few too many drinks. My words were a bit harsh. Don't take it to heart, okay? I ignored him and picked up my pace. Hey, don't walk so fast. He caught up, hovering near my shoulder. I have a friend who runs a company. Want me to introduce you? The pay is definitely better than whatever you're doing now. I stopped dead and turned to face him. No. Li Jian chuckled, a greasy sound that made my skin crawl. Don't be so cold. I'm just looking out for you. I stared him straight in the eyes. I said no. I turned and headed down the stairs. Behind me, he shouted, Don't be so ungrateful. I didn't look back. I practically ran out of the building. Over the next few days, I kept bumping into him. He was always there, at the top of the stairs, by the entrance, lurking in the hallway. Every time, he'd give me that same sickening smile and try to strike up a conversation. I avoided him when I could. When I couldn't, I kept my face like stone and hurried past. Then came the night it escalated. I had just gotten home and made a bowl of instant noodles. I sat at the coffee table and took 2 bites when a sudden knock echoed through the room. Asterisk thump, 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 asterisk. I stood up and crept to the door. I looked through the peephole. It was Li Jian. His face was pressed close to the wood, his breath fogging the lens. Little girl, he muttered. Open up. I took a sharp step back. My palms were instantly soaked with sweat. I know you're in there. His voice drifted through the door, thick with the smell of alcohol. Stop hiding. I gripped my phone so hard my fingers shook. Open the door. I brought you something to eat. The knocking grew louder, heavier. Asterisk thump, 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 asterisk. I backed away until my shoulders hit the wall. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I pulled up the dial pad and, with trembling thumbs, pressed 110. Hello? Emergency center. My voice came out as a thin whisper. Someone is harassing me. He won't stop banging on my door. The dispatcher asked for my address. I gave it to her, my voice cracking. She told me to stay inside and keep the door locked. Help was on the way. I leaned against the wall, my legs turning to jelly. Outside, the noise didn't stop. Stop pretending. I know you're in there. Li Jian's voice was booming now. Your boyfriend isn't home, is he? Open up. Let's just chat. Boom. He kicked the door. The entire frame shuddered. I let out a small scream and covered my mouth. I've already called the police. I yelled, trying to sound brave. Li Jian just laughed. Feisty, aren't we? Let's see if they actually show up. I bit my lip, terrified to make another sound. Quiet now. He kicked the door again. I'll just wait right here. Let's see how long you can hide. I slid down the wall and hugged my knees, shaking uncontrollably. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, the shouting stopped. I crept back to the peephole. Li Jian was still there, leaning against the wall, lighting a cigarette. Smoke drifted through the hallway as he squinted at my door, waiting. I collapsed back onto the floor. I don't know how much time passed before I heard heavy footsteps coming up the stairs. Police, a man's voice barked. Li Jian froze. He turned to run, but two officers were already there, blocking both ends of the hallway. Li Jian flashed a fake, nervous smile. Officers. I was just joking with my neighbor. Joking? One officer frowned. The caller said you were harassing her and kicking the door. No, I just... The other officer knocked on my door. Anyone inside? Open up. I used the wall to pull myself up. My legs were weak. I checked the peephole, saw the uniforms, and finally turned the deadbolt. I stood behind the door, pale and trembling, my eyes red from holding back tears. Are you okay? The officer asked. I nodded slowly. I'm okay. The officer turned back to Li Jian. You're coming with us. Li Jian's face turned ashen. Officers, really, I didn't do anything. I just had too much to drink. I knocked on the wrong door. Wrong door? The officer pointed at me. She called us. You don't call the police over a wrong door. Li Jian opened his mouth, but no words came out. They led him down the stairs. Before leaving, the officer looked at me. Don't worry. We're taking him down to the station. Thank you, I whispered. By the time Li Jian was released the next morning, the sun was high. He'd been detained all night, given a warning, and fined 500 yuan. As he walked out of the station, his face was dark with rage. He stood by the road and lit a cigarette, inhaling deeply. Damn it, he hissed, smoke pouring from his nose. Does she really think I'm afraid of her? All he could see was my face. The more he thought about it, the angrier he got. A joke had turned into a criminal record. His workplace would definitely find out. He crushed the cigarette, but under his heel, and headed back toward the apartment. Meanwhile, Duan Yin had been working overtime at a property management site. An older employee had taken leave, and Duan Yin stepped in to cover. It was 30 yuan an hour. By working 6 extra hours a day, he could make an extra 180. It was the only way we'd ever save enough to move. Around 3 in the afternoon, the landlord called him. Xiao Duan, a tenant says the hallway light is out. I remember you know how to fix those. Help me out? I'll pay you the market rate. Sure, Duan Yin said. He went to the building. The hallway was pitch black. The motion sensor light was dead. He set up his ladder and climbed up to check the wiring. Footsteps echoed below. Someone was coming up. Duan Yin didn't look back. He stayed focused on the light fixture. Yo, Xiao Duan. It was Li Jian. Duan Yan's hands paused. He turned his head. Li Jian was leaning against the wall, a cigarette dangling from his lips. A smug, ugly grin pulled at his face. So, what does your girlfriend actually do all day? Duan Yin didn't answer. He went back to the wires. Li Jian stepped closer, lowering his voice. I've seen her heading out all dressed up. Pretty flashy for a girl living here. You sure she isn't doing something extra on the side? Duan Yan's screwdriver stopped. He slowly turned around. From the top of the ladder, he looked down at Li Jian. What did you say? His voice was quiet, but it was cold as ice. Li Jian thought he had the upper hand. He smirked. I'm just looking out for you, man. Don't want you wearing a green hat without knowing it. Think about it. You're just a security guard. You think you can afford a girl like that? She's definitely... Duan Yin didn't let him finish. He leaped off the ladder with terrifying speed. Before Li Jian could react, a fist slammed into his face. The force was massive. Li Jian's head cracked against the wall. F. Li Jian clutched his face, blood leaking through his fingers. He tried to scramble up to hit back, but Duan Yan's boot caught him square in the stomach. Li Jian crumpled, wheezing in pain. Everyone who lived near Duan Yin thought they knew him. He was the guy who left early and came back late. He was the guy who helped old ladies carry groceries without saying a word. He was quiet. He was polite. He was distant, like a blade kept deep in a sheath. You couldn't see the edge, but the coldness was sharper than any threat. Li Jian tried to crawl away. Li Jian tried to crawl away. You mother. Duan Yin grabbed him by the throat and slammed him back against the wall. His grip tightened. Li Jian's face turned a deep, suffocating purple. Say it again, I said. My voice was flat, cold, and completely empty of emotion. I kept my brow low, my eyes sinking into the shadows of my sockets. I knew how I looked, dark, intense, staring at him like he was a piece of trash I was about to throw away. Li Jian was terrified. He shook his head violently, desperate for air. I let go, and he slumped against the wall, gasping for breath. Why are you telling me this now? I knelt down so I was eye level with him. Li Jian coughed, his eyes darting around, too scared to speak. I didn't have time for games. I reached out and clamped my hand around his throat again, my fingertips digging into his skin. I asked you a question. I was just talking, he stammered, his voice cracking. Did you go see my girlfriend? I asked. My tone hadn't changed. It was still eerily calm. Li Jian grit his teeth and stayed silent. I increased the pressure. Talk. His face went from purple to a sickly mottled blue. His eyes started to bulge. He began clawing at my hand, making broken, wheezing noises. I loosened my grip just a fraction. He slumped forward, coughing hysterically. A few days ago, he croaked, clutching his throat. I was drunk. I knocked on her door. That's all. I stood up and looked down at him. He looked up, finally seeing the look in my eyes. If you ever harass her again, I said, my voice barely a whisper, I'll make sure you can't stay in this city. Do you understand? Li Jian tried to mutter something, but I didn't care to hear it. I kicked him hard in the ribs. He curled into a ball, groaning in agony. I didn't look back. I grabbed my toolbox, climbed back up the ladder, and finished the job. The whole thing took less than 2 minutes. Below me, Li Jian didn't dare move. I screwed the light cover back on, and the voice-activated lamp flickered to life. The dim yellow glow hit my face. I looked like I hadn't moved a muscle. I packed my tools, headed down the ladder, and walked right past him. My footsteps echoed down the hallway as I walked away. It took a long time before I heard him trembling as he tried to crawl to his feet. When I got back to the apartment, Rong Jiqiao was in the kitchen. She heard the door and poked her head out. You're back. I started taking off my shoes. Yeah. She walked over, her eyes landing on my hands. What happened to your hand? It's all red. I looked down. My knuckles were scraped and raw. It's nothing. Just bumped it. I went into the bathroom and turned on the faucet. I let the cold water numbing my skin, watching the blood swirl down the drain until only the swelling remained. I dried my hands and walked back out. Rong Jiqiao was waiting with a bowl of hot soup. Drink this. I just finished it. I took the bowl and finished it one sip at a time. It was good. Delicious, I said, setting the bowl down. She smiled at me. I'll make it more often then. I felt the coldness in my chest finally start to thaw. Okay. Over the next few days, Rong Jiqiao noticed a change in Li Jian. Usually, he'd linger in the hallways to accidentally run into her with a greasy smile. Now, the second he saw her, he turned and ran. Once, she caught him at the top of the stairs. He literally shrank back into the shadows and waited for her to pass before he dared to come out. She thought it was strange, but she was relieved. She figured the police must have scared him off. That weekend, she went out for groceries. On her way back, she saw Li Jian smoking downstairs. His face was a mess, purple bruises on his cheeks and a nasty yellowing mark near his mouth. She froze. When Li Jian saw her, his cigarette dropped from his shaking fingers. He turned and bolted, limping like he'd been badly hurt. She watched him go, wondering who had given him such a beating. When she got inside, she started putting the vegetables away. I was sitting on the sofa, scrolling through my phone. What did you buy? I asked without looking up. Ribs and some greens, she said, sitting down next to me. I just saw Li Jian downstairs. My thumb paused on the screen for a split second. Oh, his face is covered in bruises. Looks like someone really worked him over. I kept my eyes on my phone. Maybe he got drunk and fell. She thought about it and actually laughed. Good. He deserved it. She didn't give it another thought and headed into the kitchen to start dinner. I put my phone down and tapped my fingers against my knee. The scabs on my knuckles were almost gone. In a few days, there wouldn't be a trace. I stood up and leaned against the kitchen doorframe, watching her. She was chopping meat with quick, practiced movements. "What do you want for dinner?" she asked. "Anything," I said. "I'll eat whatever you make." She looked back and smiled. "I'll make a lot then. You've gotten thin lately." I didn't say anything. I just watched her. The kitchen light made her look soft and clean. She was beautiful. The way her eyes tilted up at the corners, the way her lashes cast tiny shadows on her cheeks. She had her hair tied back in a messy low ponytail, a few stray strands dancing near her face as she worked. She looked so domestic, so safe. The hum of the range hood and the distant sound of city traffic felt miles away. All that existed was the steady, rhythmic sound of her knife against the cutting board. But then, Li Jian's words echoed in my head. "You're just a security guard. You think you can afford a girl like that?" I bit my lip and walked back to the sofa. My phone vibrated. It was a message from the property manager. "Xiao Duan, can you pick up extra shifts next week? Hourly pay." "Okay," I replied. I stared at that one word for a long time. The money I was making wasn't enough. If I wanted to give her the life she actually wanted, it wasn't even close. A few evenings later, Rong Jiqiao finished her shift at the clinic. The sky was painted with the colors of sunset, and the air smelled like sweet roasted sweet potatoes from a street vendor. She stood on the steps and checked the time. I told her I'd be there at 7:30. It was only 7:20. She stepped to the side of the road to wait. Behind her, she heard the sharp click of high heels. Zhu Xiaoya walked out, clutching a pink designer bag. Her makeup was fresh, her lipstick a loud, bright red. She didn't even look at Rong Jiqiao as she pulled out her phone. A moment later, a black Mercedes pulled up to the curb. The window rolled down, and Xiao Lu poked his head out, waving. "Baby, get in." Zhu Xiaoya's face lit up with a huge smile. She practically jogged to the car in her heels. Xiao Lu pushed the door open for her.